Day 6 of the November-December 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. Last night in a group meeting, we spent quite a bit of time wondering what is the difference between a creative presence for an actor, a director, a singer, a dancer, when there's no thought of self, which does happen for moments, and as one person put it, the whole thing breaks open and there's an outflow of creativity. The difference between that and sitting here quietly, openly, we have to be clear and sure that we're not talking theoretically. Of course, there's nobody to prohibit us to talk theoretically. That happens 99% of all our book writing time and discussion time. I don't mean here necessarily. To come to realize that every question we ask is a genuine question, must be answerable or investigatable directly by our own experience. And not to accept, quote unquote, our own experience too lightly, too easily. Because what reveals itself in sitting, wondering, questioning, transparenting, is an amazing hiding power of image, or defensive power, not to be seen. So, just a few words about this comparison, or does it make sense to compare that? Is there a difference? Is there a sameness? Because one can also ask, why do we want to know? Where is our question coming from? It's always a very rich inquiry. Having myself, in my younger years, my 20s and 30s, done some singing, performing, I have some memory of how things were then. It was incredible butterflies and anxiety before the performance, which for anyone using the voice for performing, it's a very embarrassing thing. Excitement, butterflies manifest as a dry throat, which is not what one needs. So one sucks on all kind of cherry pits and things to keep the saliva going. But there do happen moments in which things really seem to flow, and a new presentation of the music happens, which is surprising. And yet, if I remember right, this me watching was never quite absent, feeling very good when things were flowing well, at ease. And because it was feeling at ease, things could flow even better. But if the throat did some tricks, dried up again or got tense, there was immediately some dismay or know how to put it into words, which again also affected the performance. And of course, a almost insatiable appetite for an approving audience. I couldn't hear it often enough how well one did, how much one moved the audience, or whatever all there was this, a real greed for it. But there were these moments where there was a minimum of self-consciousness. I cannot say a total absence of it. It was too close, too nearby to keep checking how things were going. Not verbally, not obtrusively, but there. And of course, all of one's skills, one's knowledge of the book, of the music, one's in touchness with the words of the songs one was singing. The consciousness was active. In sitting quietly, the consciousness is minimally active. And I'm not talking right now of the way we normally sit down. There's a lot of blur and activity in the consciousness. I'm talking of being here now with ka, ka, ka. It's not activity of the consciousness because it's not being interpreted or evaluated or used. Of course, it's used to present it here in the talk. But the upper area, somebody took a little exception with me for always talking about the brain, saying the brain is also on the liver and on the organs. Of course it is. But one can feel it for oneself, whether there's quietness and openness up here in the upper story, or whether there's dense and headachy, trying to figure things out. This is localizable. Not that the rest of the body does not participate. Of course it does. We're talking about it all the time. And these beautiful presentations of that, there are also receptor cells and thinking cells on all of these organs, like Deepak Chopra puts that very clearly there in his talks and lectures, how the immune system grieves when there's grief and therefore doesn't do its job. I get sick. So this is all acknowledged. So where did I come from with this excursion? Oh, yeah. In this quiet sitting, it feels light and airy, open, spacious, not dense and convoluted and tense or headachy. No, I'm not saying this is so for a performer. What comes to mind right now springs up as a memory, and consciousness does furnish all kinds of stuff in a talk. It's not as quiet as in sitting. Pavarotti came up here, seeing him as volume. An incredible way of singing. You have the feeling this is the Rock of Gibraltar. Nothing could move him. And I heard an interview with him where he said he's got the butterflies before every performance and is worried whether it'll come out all right. And what's all right for Pavarotti may not be all right for someone else. There are always increasing standards being set for more perfection, more refinement, more subtlety, which is not the case in sitting. There are no standards for that. If they're there, question them. Where do they come from? Are they needed? Or do they obscure and restrict the field. Even in talking right now, even though memory furnishes Pavarotti and the interview, consciousness can quiet down at any moment. It's not needed to support the quiet openness of this moment. If people are still interested, I haven't said enough, we still have some time for group meetings and individual meetings. The question, what is the purpose of my life? Or what? No, somebody brought that up before the artistic creation question. Somebody mentioning sitting in the hot tub and it felt so okay, the warm water, one was present with the water and the other two people in there. There's no conflict, animosity, it was just such presence and a sense of well-being, contentment, I think was the descriptive word. And then this person asked, I wondered, is this what this work is all about? I'm not making fun of it. It was a lovely description. And what comes to mind right now is all these questions asked of Zen masters, what is the Buddha? And responses like a shit-wiping stick, or buns, hot rolls that is, or, well, the other day it came out broccoli. Why not hot tub? But I want to be careful. Discerning the difference between a feeling of at easement, feeling good, and if we feel physically good, the body does not give any trouble, then it's easier to be at one with the others, less irritation to find fault or feel separate. But I think I spelled it out quite carefully a few days ago in a talk, that the essence of this work is to be very clear of what we are and what we are not. To see through all the delusions about ourselves and those others, constantly produced by the brain and other parts of the body. To hide reality, hide what really is. And to become very intimate with the power of delusive thinking, masquerading for truth or true information, which it is not. So again, it is for each one of us who raises a question to look further. This looking further need not disturb the tranquility of this moment. What am I? In the midst of a hot tub. And watch the answers that come up. Or is there an answerless not knowing, and therefore the openness of airplane humming? No need to feel important or unimportant. No need to produce oneself or efface oneself. No need. No fear. Is this what this work is all about? But I must quickly rush in to say, I'm not trying to paint ideal states to become yet another goal to be achieved, to be attained. That's why it's always dangerous to talk about this, and yet talk we must at times. Not just about our psychological hindrances, but also to hint at that which is beyond all psychological hindrances. Wholeness, vastness, emptiness, not the words. The truth of pure being. Somebody mentioned that last night. Was it last night? It seems to be that your teaching, Toni, is sort of, to a great extent or largely, psychological. I don't know whether a comparison was made at that point with spirituality versus psychology. And that rang back to the days when I was asked to give talks at the Zen Center. It was in 1975, I believe. During the time that the Roshi was absent for 3 months at a time, he had this idea, maybe she could give 8 talks during that time so that the energy doesn't go down when I'm gone. That was precisely how it was put. Always people on staff report low energy when the on period is over, so why not keep it up with somebody giving a talk? Which was frightening to me, this prospect. But of course, your teacher asks, you say yes. And then, of course, I had a lectern with a light, and I prepared every last word. I wrote it all out, typed it. Here and there, maybe daring to add a little something that wasn't written, but pretty much keeping to the manuscript, but only talking for 20 minutes and then opening it up for discussion, which was an unheard of thing at a Zen center. In the Zendo, after a talk. But what made the energies flow into doing this was feeling there is so much unsaid in this training which needs to be spelled out. I was already doing counseling at the time because those problems did not belong into Doksan, which is the private meeting with the teacher. So I was asked to counsel people. A few others were asked too. So from that contact, I had found out how much there needed to be talked about, looked at, and exposed in the talk and discussion. The first talk was on attention. The second was on fear and pain, relationship, sexuality, a lot of topics which didn't exist in one's practice. So if somebody would ask, well, what do I do with the fear? Of course, at that time I was a Zen teacher, and Mu was the main practice to find out what Mu is. I would say, your fear is also Mu. Don't use the Mu to repress it, but include it. All of that is also Mu. But the talks then and also later brought that criticism from senior disciples that I was psychologizing. Too psychological. That was not the essence of Zen. So that's what I was reminded of when somebody mentioned that it was very psychological what I bring up, the looking at stuff. But what is psychological, the talks or us? We are psychological beings with all kinds of problems. So acute, so powerful, so much ignored, or so much attached to or rejected, that it beckons to be illuminated, irradiated with attention. Not because I prefer psychology to something else, but because it's there, it presents itself. Not, as I said in one talk, just to learn to be with our feelings, but to understand where they come from. Not psychologically, psychoanalytically, historically, but now, right now, at this moment of getting engaged or involved in something. What is getting involved fundamentally? Is I'm afraid or angry? What feels threatened? What feels slighted or put down or put up? To be so familiar, so intimate with it, that these surface manifestations of the feelings don't bowl us over every time and one sees, yes, this is, again, settling in self-centeredness, wanting my way, or being afraid of not getting it, or being afraid of losing it, or of ending as the known me, to which there has grown such attachment. It's just full of tentacles, like the beans and peas down in the garden, around and around and around the stake. And the stake is this me, self-center consciousness, appearing in all kinds of guises that make it more palatable or more adorable. And holding on to it. Thought is holding on to itself because it has this power of gratifying, of habituating, of pleasing, or of scaring. We're attached to it all because it's habit. Because this is how we think. What we think is our existence, to which there is attachment for fear of dying. It's amazing to watch it, to become aware of it. Attachment to habit. For fear of uncertainty, insecurity. Not knowing where I am, what I am, what's going on. Which is the first reaction to an absence of habit, insecurity, because the habit has provided the track. But the sitting in meditation provides some energy here and combined energy from the whole collective to look at some of this stuff, which alone one would rather ignore. Not always, but it's helpful to pool our energies. Because attending, awareing is pure energy. Not for the sake of a goal, but for the sake of illuminating what is here. So what is our purpose in life? This question coming up here and there in meetings, and also, why am I here? What for? And also, in going back home to work, to family, how is this all going to work out? Am I going to just be back in the muck, as somebody said? Almost predicting it. That's why I know I'm going to be back in the muck, I know it. Don't predict anything. Already the absence of prediction and knowing how things are going to be is one less layer of clouds. A little bit lighter, a little closer to the sun. When this question came up in a group once, and all of us groping what to do with this purpose. Because as several people mentioned, nothing really has satisfied, even though it was expected to be gratifying, fulfilling. And then turns out, no, this isn't it. And yet, I've got to do something with my life. This is the way we put it. It's a horrendous way of putting it. Because there's me and my life and what I do with it. Whereas, in truth, this is all one thing. We're life. Not separate from those deer with the white bushy tails, watching and bounding gracefully. So, at one point, it just came to say, what if the purpose of life for all of us was to be kind and caring to each other? Kind, caring for each other, something like that. Helping each other. Not as a helper syndrome, but kindly, caring. And it seemed to find an immediate resonance with people before the if and buts arose again. Because is it enough to be kind to somebody? What do I tell somebody who asks me, what are you doing? I'm kind to people. Actually, the beauty of this just comes to mind right now. This can permeate each and any job. So if there's still this residual or very powerful urge to be something so I can tell others what I am or tell my parents so they are more at ease with their children, one can still be kind and caring. Can one? Have to find out. Or does something take over? Oh, I saw on television on the day which is supposed to be the most biggest shopping day in America. They call it Black Friday. Did I hear that? Black? Maybe I heard wrong. Why would it be Black Friday? Well, anyway, the camera took people in front of a store, Kmart or whatever it was, 4:30 p.m. already lined up because there were some goodies to be had inside after 7 or 8. And the people were talking with, there was really, you had the feeling they're not there for shopping, they're there to be with each other. Had a good time, they were smiling and communal. And then the doors open. I'm surprised people weren't run over by shopping carts. And the facial expression, there was one woman who I had seen before, and there was all of the smiles and softness was gone out of the cheeks. And there was sort of a determined expression, tight, to get to the Barbie doll or whatever. Yeah. So where did this come from? Being kind to each other. It works at times, and at other times it doesn't. And if one notices it, probably people who were before the Kmart are not so concerned with what am I. And therefore this stuff has very likely no possibility to come into view, while or at least afterwards. But engaged in this work to some degree or other, we have this opportunity to allow to come into view what goes on for us, who basically wouldn't mind being kind and caring of others, and what snaps us out of it, as it were. examine it, to wonder about it, to become wise about ourselves and each other. This is when we ask, well, what's the relationship of coming to a retreat where things are so quiet, and indeed at times there is a moment of openness or softness, lovingness for other people, who in the beginning I may have felt as a disturbance. But what's the relationship of this quietness and some degree of energy to look and listen? What's the relationship of that with our daily life, where it seems to go right back to the muck? I'm quoting someone else. Maybe the relationship is this, that this will bring about that we will watch a bit more carefully what goes on for us, and maybe a bit less threateningly, a little bit less judgmentally. Because with self-threats, self-deprecation, it's impossible to watch, to detect these subtle movements of self-imagery and protectiveness and defensiveness. It takes this real interest, and I would say scientific-like interest, if by scientific we mean the absence of judgment, the wanting judgment, the wanting to find out what's there. And coming back to sitting, we may have learned more about ourselves, and maybe that can manifest in sitting when things come up, to see them more clearly, more understandingly, and go back to our daily life and notice more stuff which make us maybe a bit more caring and kind. I don't know. You need to see, watch it. Of course, one may not find oneself being kind or caring, and yet one may be, because one doesn't constantly think about that. So it's not how we think about ourselves. Rather, not thinking about ourselves, which opens up the house and the windows. And the question also came up, that was, I think, earlier in the afternoon. What is love? Actually, at first, it didn't come up like a simple question, what is love? But someone mentioning and other people confirming that so much need to be loved, so much neediness, desire, which informs one's life, needing to be loved by others, by the audience. We talked about that. And other comments on needing to be loved and loving, and then somebody asking, well, what is our definition of love? So again, it takes that magnifying glass to put over the whole thing and look afresh. What do we call needing love? What do I need when I say I need to be loved? And let the word go and look at what really is wanted, or what gratifies temporarily, because that was generally agreed upon. It is never enough, no matter how much of it I get. So, what? I don't have to spell it all out. What do we want when we say I want to be loved? The physical touch, the embrace, affection, physical affection, sex. Is that love? Is that what we mean by being loved? Wanting the other person to be concerned about me, while at the same time I want. The other person wants me to be concerned about them. See, that's the tricky thing. We want of someone else what someone else wants of us. And does this go hand in hand, or is this already a source of friction? What do we mean, I want to be loved? To look at it. As long as I want something of you, of others, is the field open, open to, can I say, the source of our being? Let's first ask, what is the source of wanting? We've asked it all the way through this retreat. What is the source of wanting and fearing? Ask it quietly, inwardly, not knowingly. And not just in sitting, but in our daily life and interactions with each other. I want. And I'm disappointed or irritated if you don't give me or act counter to me. I, me. My wanting, my lack, which is quite natural to feel a lack when one is settled in the I, because the I is full of lack. It's cut off. It's deluded of being separate. And out of this painful delusion wants to cement it back by wanting others to love me in my isolated state. I'm putting it very roughly, but this is how it is. Or is it? Find out. So, we asked all along, the root of our wanting and fearing is this I-centeredness, self-consciousness, self-centeredness of this whole consciousness, self-centeredness. It sounds as though I'm saying it judgmentally. I'm not. I'm just emphasizing it. Feeling separate, alone, isolated, ambitious, needing to conquer, needing to be loved. And with that, inevitably, inextricably goes fear and more wanting. That's why we ask, is there something beyond this self-centeredness from which all of us suffer in wanting and fearing and building up delusive structures of self-importance? What's the root of that? Or what's the source of it all? And is it possible for a human being like you and me to be in touch with the source? Source is a word, I understand, but what it points to is not a word. It is pure being, pure awareness, with the self-centered circuit in abeyance. Quiet. And in that wonder of wonders, there's love. Love, caring, and boundless energy. lovingness, which doesn't ask for returns. That comes by itself or it doesn't come. And people reported all along that in quiet sitting or in one's daily life, suddenly one is flooded with lovingness. One doesn't know where it comes from or why, but it has no problem in it. No division. Not even an owner at this moment. That owner is not thought about and therefore doesn't exist. So is this the essence of meditation? Intimacy with this heavily wired body-mind, wired through conditioning of the millennia. Getting acquainted with it, intimate with it, and also in touch with pure being, in which there's no wiring whatsoever. In touch is still a dualistic expression. Words do that. Can we say one is that? Openness? Without becoming something again, via thought. We will end here for today.